We're going to focus on some of the work we've been doing collaboratively monitoring polluting outfalls. So I'm managing the London Demo's involvement in CaSTCo. I think Michelle showed this earlier in a slide. This is just where all the different demos are, and obviously we are the one next to that big London sign. We're specifically working on two catchments in London, the Brent catchment and the London Lee, both north of the Thames. So we have a few key objectives as part of our collaborative monitoring plan, I'm just going to focus on two main ones. The first one is we wanted to see if we could use citizen science to investigate the water quality statuses of the Brent and London Lee catchments. So figure out where the good water quality areas are, the poor water quality areas or pollution hotspots, and where the data gaps are as well. And we would do this through collaboratively establishing catchment monitoring strategies, which you can see in the bottom screenshot. This is for the London Lee, and yeah, these are actually this is on the London Lee catchment monitoring catchment action plan online if you want to have a look afterwards. But the Brent one is coming out very soon. So when we would establish these catchment monitoring strategies, we would then train citizen scientists in how to use HANA checkers, like the ammonia one showed there. We also use the ammonia medium range, and then phosphate HANA checkers as well, which is one of the CaSTCo audited methods. So that's getting the physicochemical data. So we'd also do the conductivity probes and temperature probes and the Secchi tube for turbidity. And then to get the biological water quality data, we do urban river fly. And then we help, when we train the citizen scientists, we then help them choose their site from these collaboratively established catchment monitoring strategies. And then we keep communication with them, maintain their regular monitoring. And actually at our demo table, we've got an image of what we're working on, a sort of scorecard and data dashboard as well to bring all that data together. So the second objective, so in those pollution hotspots, we then wanted to, which are often linked to polluting outfalls. So we were focusing in this project on sewage coming out of the polluting outfalls, but obviously in London we've got road runoff as well, which Diane, one of our citizen scientists, has been working on in the Brent catchment. But for CaSTCo, we were just really looking at polluting outfalls, which is often sewage. So we wanted to work with Thames Water and the EA and other NGOs like ZSL, the Zoological Society of London, who established another CaSTCo audited method, the outfall safari, and also then work with community groups to bring all of this data together and more effectively monitor polluting outfalls and hopefully more quickly resolve the issues. And that's a lovely picture of a polluting outfall in the London Lee catchment. So now just, going to hand over to Rachel to talk through some of that work that Thames Water does.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I work as a senior advisor on the environmental protection team at Thames Water. So our main function is the surface water outfall programme. So we sort of look at resolving outfalls polluted by third-party urban diffuse pollution, widespread misconnections. Obviously, misconnections are a massive issue in urban watercourses, but they also lack the exposure of other pollution sources. So I appreciate a lot of people in this room probably already aware, but just by way of little background, the wastewater network is split up into foul system, surface water system, and in some areas, such as central London, a combined system. So a misconnection occurs when foul fixtures or appliances are wrongly connected into the surface water sewer, and so going to the local watercourse untreated. So our surface water outfall programme at Thames, or SWAP for short, was developed by us in partnership with the Environment Agency. It's essentially a list of unsatisfactory outfalls suffering from multiple widespread pollution sources, namely misconnections. The process follows the nationally agreed good practice guidance for resolving pollution, and all of the outfalls or projects that we work on gain like a formal sign-off from the Environment Agency when we've completed our work. So in AMP8, we aim as a team to significantly improve 200 polluted surface water outfalls. Often they take like a long-term investigation to find all the sources, find the misconnections and any other pollution sources that we find sort of along the way. So just to give an idea on the numbers of our programme, really, in AMP7, we significantly improved 202 outfalls, which was across 63 different watercourses. So obviously Thames Water covers a large patch. So yeah, a lot of area to work on. In total, over 3,500 properties with pollution sources were found, with over 6,000 appliances between them. So obviously that's a lot of wastewater going into the watercourses. As you can see from the graph, washing machines were the biggest source of pollution, with kitchen sinks and hand basins followed closely behind. So how are they identified and how do they make their way onto our programme? So outfalls are often referred to us internally by our other teams within Thames Water. It could be from pollution events, for example. Our team itself in environmental protection, we carry out river walks, so we go and actively look for polluting outfalls. Local authorities often send us reports for any polluting outfalls in their patch, also directly from the Environment Agency. Stakeholder groups and citizen scientists are really, really important to us. So obviously when we go out, it's a very snapshot view of what that pollution could look like, whereas the citizen scientists often know their stretch of watercourse very well. So they can see if it's like new pollution or if pollution changes. Like it's really good information for us to have. And then finally, our main feeder to the programme is actually from outfall safaris. So you may be aware it's a systematic programme of surveying surface water outfalls. We fund and organise the outfall safaris along with ZSL, working with the citizen scientists to assess the polluted outfalls. Each outfall is scored and then the reports are sent to Thames Water. We then go out and reassess the outfalls and add them to our waiting list to be worked on in projects in the future. We also do kind of stress that if the pollution is significant, that it is reported sort of at the time and we don't wait until we receive the reports. Obviously, we can go and look at them reactively. Currently, 66% of our waiting list is derived from these outfall safaris. So for us, the citizen scientists are really, really important to our programme for sort of sending these our way.
Thanks. So then through CaSTCo, we wanted to keep developing this work because, as Rachel said, the outfall safaris are only 4 years, and that's only on a small bit of each catchment. So we have a lot of citizen scientists who live near their rivers. They see these polluting outfalls and they wanted to get involved and make sure that they're monitoring these outfalls and make sure there's more data on the outfalls to build that weight of evidence around the issues there. So I created this results chain of what is actually going on from the identification of polluting outfall to its rectification. And there's loads of different things happening in that process. So in there is outfall safaris, and then what the swap team do is in the middle bit. So it can go on the waiting list, it can then go on a live list, it can be signed off, it can get past the local authority. But there's a lot of ways that actually citizen science can feed in to make this more effective. So the first way is some assets during outfall safaris are found to be polluting, but then Thames Water say this isn't actually ours, and it gets passed to the EA, and the EA are underfunded, under-resourced, so they're not always monitoring those outfalls. So that's where citizen scientists can come in to monitor those. The other one is sometimes, so the outfall safari is only every 4 years. Maybe that time it's a misconnection that's the problem, but the homeowner wasn't in, so you can't actually see that there's a misconnection there because the washing machine or the toilet isn't being used, so it's being missed. Another thing is that misconnections are coming online all the time, sadly. New developments mean that new misconnections are coming in. So maybe the outfall safari didn't pick it up because it just wasn't there. But now we know from some of the catchment monitoring we're doing, there's likely a pollution source in between 2 points. Oh, we can see there's an outfall there. Let's get some monitoring, citizen science monitoring on that. There's also room for improvement with the SWAP waiting list. They've got categories actually, depending on, so like I think P1, is this right? P1 is the high priority, and P3 is the lowest priority. So in there's room to, if you build that weight of evidence around a polluting outfall, it actually shouldn't be P3, it should be moved to P1. Number 4 is, so on the SWAP, some of these polluting outfalls are actually on the live list being worked on, and we have quite a few cases where citizen scientists are monitoring those outfalls because Thames Water do go out quite frequently to work on, monitor those outfalls being worked on, but they're not always there. So the citizen scientists can pick up that and provide more data on what's going on when Thames Water aren't there. And sometimes, yeah, the outfall, Thames Water have done all they can. Most properties, polluting outfalls are voluntarily rectified by the property owner, but sometimes that person refuses. So that's when it can get passed to the local authority. Getting nods, I'm saying it right. And then that's where, unfortunately, local authorities then differ on their responses. So citizen science, again, can help put pressure, build the evidence so we can send that to local authorities to say, yeah, this outfall really needs your attention. You need to take it to court or whatever the next steps are. So a couple of examples of where this has happened, not for that last one specifically, but for some of those other inputs. On the left, you've got the leader of the Dagenham Brook Action Group, and that's in the London Lee. It's a tributary to the London Lee. And that is a pretty nasty outfall that's been polluting. He's been monitoring upstream and downstream of the outfall for about 2 years now with the Hannah checkers. It got picked up in the 2024 outfall safari as I think it scored a 10, so it got moved to the SWAT team's waiting list. But we were showing Steve's ammonia results were usually around 2 milligrams per litre, which is poor in the WFD assessments or categories. But quite frequently, recently, he was getting about 5, which is really bad. So we sent that to the SWAT team, who then said, we'll move this up the waiting list prioritization. On the right is a photo from Clean Up the River Brent, who are an amazing citizen science group in the Brent catchment. This is the Ealing Golf Club outfall, infamous because it is so terrible. It got scored really badly in the 2023 outfall safari. So it got picked up by the SWAP team, and they're working on it. It's live, but there is continuous monitoring going on here by the EA and citizen scientists. There's a really good working group. They meet regularly. They discuss results and next steps. So I think you had a meeting last week as well about it, which went really well. And then the last one is the River Ching Action Group. They are on the London Lee, another tributary into the London Lee, quite near the Dagenham Brook. We helped them last summer develop a citizen science water quality monitoring strategy. So they have 15 sites and they collect physical chemical data at those sites, and they have 3 riverfly sites as well. The EA are actually monitoring on this tributary this year, but they only have 1 point, and it's right at the downstream end. So they can see something's wrong with the river, but they don't know exactly where it's coming from. And that's where these 15 sites help us figure out where the issue is coming from, which we know is from these outfalls pictured in this screenshot taken from the River Ching Action Group's monitoring report that they create every 6 months, which is on our website if you want to check it out. So in the outfall safari actually happened here in 2023, But interestingly, the outfalls, 2 of them scored 0 and 1 scored 4, and that's not high enough to take it onto the swap team waiting list. But when the Ching Action Group collated their results, created the monitoring report, they then were able to show that their ammonia concentrations peaked down at and downstream of these outfalls. And phosphate as well was lower upstream, and then right downstream it was higher. And actually, phosphate, interestingly, stayed higher the whole rest of the way down the River Ching. So we then had a site visit in February this year. The EA came with their YSI probe to verify the Hanachecker results, because we haven't got our results out yet to show that we've done a study where we've showed the Hanachecker data against the lab data, like the Anglian demo did and some other demos, but we haven't got those results out quite yet. So we needed the EA to come validate the results with their YSI probe. Again, it showed ammonia readings were way too high. So we sent the results across to the swap team, who then added these projects as 2 separate projects to their waiting list. And then we had confirmation recently that it's been passed to your contractors, who are due to start it hopefully by the end of the financial year. So there's some really good work and good case studies, but we've still got work to do to make it more strategic across the catchment. But yeah, it's been a good process and good project. So thank you.
I think that tees up this session really nicely, because that's a really good example of some collaboration that's had some really good tangible outcomes. So the next session is all about collaborative monitoring, using co-design and participatory approaches to drive action for river health. We're kicking this off with a couple of lightning talks, one from Paul Hume, who is the technical lead on CaSTCo, and one from Charlotte Chivers, who is a research fellow at CCRI. So I'll hand over to them, and then we'll follow up with a panel session. Charlotte first.
Great, thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Charlotte Chivers. I am a research fellow at the Countryside and Community Research Institute, which is based at the University of Gloucestershire. So my involvement in CaSTCo has primarily been through the Arun and Rother catchment. So you'll see here I draw quite a lot on the projects we've carried out there. But I've also done a deep dive looking at wider citizen science, so beyond CaSTCo actually, and I've done quite a large empirical study into co-design and to try and help inform future principles for that process. Next slide, please. Oh, do I do it? I do it. It's fine. Ignore me. I can do it myself. I'm independent. Right. Anyway, so there we go. So just to get started. So an exercise that we carried out with our citizen scientists, wider stakeholders, and a big group of natural scientists was to get them to kind of think 10 years ahead. So I asked them to forget about any obstacles and barriers and imagine, where do they want citizen science to be in 10 years' time? And I then analysed all of those. Analysed all of those findings, and these are the kind of points that they raised, some of which are positive, some of which are actually quite mixed. So integration of digital and AI opens up a whole can of worms, which I don't have time to go into today. But the reason why I show you this is because this future that people are imagining requires co-design, right? So to have collective action, to ensure that we get widened participation, to make sure that it becomes seen as a true science, which all of the citizens really feel is important, you actually need co-design. We need to work with our citizens to make sure that the projects are meeting their requirements and interests as well as our own. So to kind of explore the role of co-design, we carried out a big desk study. So I have looked at extensive literature elsewhere, but I've also looked at 2 CaSTCo programs, so River Guardians and Soil Smart. Both projects include features of co-design to varying extents. So Soil Smart was really quite co-designed with our farmers from the beginning. River Guardians included co-design where it was appropriate. And when I talk about co-design here, I'm talking about it using it pragmatically, so that we're using it where it's useful, both to citizens and to us. Because you can't necessarily co-design everything if we're really wanting to make sure the data is accurate and robust. So it's kind of a balance. I also interviewed with my team, who I'll show later, 25 citizen scientists from outside of CaSTCo, because I think it's really important that we do include wider projects that are going on. I also interviewed natural scientists and wider stakeholders, so wider stakeholders being people who might run citizen science projects or have a vested interest in them. And we also have carried out evaluation interviews across the two projects here. So the current extent of co-design, and I'm not talking about CaSTCo alone, I'm talking about citizen science in general. CaSTCo actually has included quite a lot of co-design, but I think it can go further in its next iteration, especially with citizens. It's done a great job so far, but there is more. And interviewed citizens, so here we are talking about wider than CaSTCo. A lot of them felt that there's been attempts to do co-design, but it's not quite there. So they've been asked for their opinion, asked what they thought, and then decisions are made, and they have no idea how those decisions were made, and they don't know whether they were listened to, which actually kind of defeats the point of co-design. I think transparency is really important here. And consistently, all of our participants agreed that there is a greater role for co-design. It's not a term that should be bandied around. It really does need a concerted effort. So we have then pulled together, based on all of the data and all the research we've done over 3 years, 12 principles for co-designing citizen science. I obviously don't have time to go through them all today in 5 minutes, but please do read the report. So just to go through a couple of them. So something that came out is that citizens like to be involved in creating a shared vision. So from the very beginning, even potentially before you've got funding, which is really difficult. I'm an academic, so I know you often don't have the time and resource to do that, but including citizens who will be volunteering and putting their time into data collection in the vision. So what do they want to achieve? Where do they want to monitor and why? And just trying to incorporate their views throughout from the very beginning. And that can actually really help. Having that local knowledge as well is really important. Recognising and rewarding participation in citizen science. I think CaSTCo's been brilliant for that. You know, there's been some wonderful events where we've kind of showcased what we've been up to, including with citizen scientists. I know Keir at River Guardians has been brilliant at feeding back. But actually there are kind of other ways. So citizens are individuals. Some of them might be embarrassed by public recognition. Others might kind of enjoy it. Others might be trying to find get experience for their careers, so then making sure there's skill development and leadership opportunities. We've seen projects that have included a couple of citizens who were particularly keen on steering committees, for example, and giving them those opportunities I think is really important, and that can help to recognise and reward their participation. Please do read our reports. I really hope these QR codes work. I have asked the university to put them on a repository, embargo till today, so they might work, they might not. So if they don't work, let me know, and they will hopefully be on the CaSTCo website at some point soon. We've written 2 reports. So the co-design one is kind of what I've touched on today, and the other report is more looking at the motivations and purpose and impact of citizen science. And again, we draw on kind of wider than just CaSTCo, so hopefully they can help inform future projects. I'd really like to thank the team. So lots of colleagues here from Southern Water, Western Sussex Rivers Trust, and my colleagues at the CCRI. Their expertise and support has been invaluable, and obviously most importantly, and please do ignore my typo, thanks for ignoring that, but big thank you, in particular to the citizen scientists, because we wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. It's so important, and this is why I'm quite passionate about pushing for greater co-design in future. Without further ado, I'd like to bring this back round to the time travel exercise that I introduced at the beginning. So I'm hoping that I will be able to push this a bit further and maybe write a little paper from this. I'll try not to go into too much of my academic spiel, but you know, we do like to put out additional legacy pieces here. So we might write a blog and potentially a paper. We've already got quite a lot of time travel type sort of future thinking visions, but I think one last time in this part of the project, it'd be brilliant if you could just think 10 years ahead and forget about any obstacles and barriers. So just be really ambitious here, because then we can work backwards. Just think, you know, what do you want citizen science, where do you want it to be in 10 years time? So please do complete the Slido, and it'd be brilliant to see what you all think. And yeah, if no one says co-design, then I'll be devastated. So I don't know, do I need to do anything? Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thanks whoever put codes on. Great. But yeah, covering all rich river catchments in the UK, being accepted as evidence, so that fits really nicely with the finding already, but actually recognising it potentially as more of a true science. Informed decision making, making a real difference. So that's linking the data to action on the ground. School curriculum, so yeah, including it more in education potentially, yeah. Enriching experience, so yes, that's a wider benefit. You know, we in our motivations report, we found that it's not just about data collection, it's really important for citizens, and it kind of comes top, but actually there's social connectedness, there's well-being benefits, there's nature connectedness, there's loads and loads of other reasons why people might get involved. Empowering communities, yeah, absolutely. Be a paid exercise, that's an interesting one. We did look into volunteerism and the extent to which, you know, at what stage should citizens be potentially remunerated for their time. We found a lot of citizen scientists who are retirees actually, and they have 40 years experience in this field. So for them to be, you know, sometimes they felt that their expertise wasn't being valued because they're, you know, volunteering and then being told their data's not robust when they have 40 years experience. It's quite a tricky one. Yeah, more funding for I mean, yeah, the Environment Agency does always come up as a bit of a yeah. Yeah, needing more funding. Yeah, definitely. I think having that long-term funding is really, really important. So I think we should close it there for now. Please do feel free to keep putting these in. We'll use them. Not be all old people. Yeah. So our average age of citizens was pretty high. Again, though, the age of citizens actually is interesting because we want it to be more inclusive. But actually, retirees are often the people who are most available to do volunteering. You know, I had a few retirees they were quite kind of slightly mean about younger generations for not doing it. And it was like, well, younger generations might be having to work full time and juggle 80 different things and cost of living crisis. So, you know, I think it's a careful balancing act. So making sure we do attract more younger people, but while being sensitive to the reasons why they might be struggling to. It's not that they don't want to, it's often just well, life gets in the way sometimes, and we're in a bit of a tricky socio-economic climate. Anyway, I will stop reading these because I keep getting really excited and I'll never disappear. So I'm going to go sit back down. And yeah, Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think that sets it up perfectly, actually, and also what Philly and Rachel talked about, and all the stuff that's over there in the gallery. When we started CaSTCo, one of the things that certainly I thought, I don't know if other people did too, when we talked about collaborative monitoring plans, then we tended to think of getting all the partners together collaboratively to plan the monitoring that citizen science would then do. But that's very narrow. That's really narrow. Actually, it's about collaborative monitoring and collaborative data collection and collaborative data interpretation and collaborative action. And so I think the collaboration, it goes through it like a stick of rock. And people have talked about that this morning. You're probably getting sick of the word collaboration, but you know, I think it's much wider. So this is about the planning. This is a few words about the planning of how we try and what we've learned about trying to do that collaborative monitoring. So Elle said to me from the Wensum catchment that when she gets partners together in a new group, then the first thing she says to them is, just look. These are your partners. And if you work with them and you build relationships with them, you can do so much more than you can or you could do if you were just working on your own. That's where she starts. So not with the data, not with all the things that I'm going to show you about, some of the planning stuff. That's the place to start. And I think we've got lots of examples of how that's true. One example from the Wensum that you've probably heard before that Steve and LL have talked about is John from the agency arranging with his colleagues for the monitoring to be done at the same time and the same place by both the agency and the volunteers, so that data could then be validated, builds trust with the volunteers who go, yeah, my data is looking good compared to the agency data. And the agency folk, John can go and say, this data is really valuable. We need to be using this. They're monitoring in places that we're not monitoring. And then that trust that builds means that the kind of thing that Michelle mentioned, where they in the same place they got the pollution reporting, involvement of the volunteers in that with the agency. Without that sort of building of trust, that probably wouldn't have happened. So I think we've got lots of examples of those kind of things happening. But it takes time. It takes time to sort of to find out what people already know and what their concerns are. It takes time to sort of like work out what data we can share with each other. It takes time to look at the background data. One of the other volunteer coordinators, Nicola from the Bean, said she felt like that was a really important step. This sort of looking at just simple questions like, what does the agency say about your river? Where are the agency and other people monitoring? And this, I mean, you've probably heard Alfie and Will talk about the CaSTCo Data Hub. This stuff is now sort of processed on the CaSTCo Data Hub so that those kind of questions you can more readily find the answers to. The data was already there, but it's trying to make it just more readily accessible. And it often feels easier to just not bother with, involving partners. But we know it's worth it. There was the example on the Wensum that I mentioned. On the team, Catchment 7 Trent Water provided labs for 4 or 5 water blitzes when they wanted to compare bacteria monitoring in the lab versus what the citizen scientists were doing. So an organisation like Seven Rivers Trust couldn't have done that on their own, for example. Alice could tell you more about that. And then there's at least a couple of examples I know of, and there may be more. I know of Anglian Water and Southern Water. There may be other ones, forgive me if there's more, who have redirected funds on this project towards data platform, project staff, projects, things that just wouldn't have happened. And maybe the two sides wouldn't have known about had they not been in the same room regularly talking to each other. So if it's a bit of an effort, but it's so worthwhile, then how do we make it easier? And one of the things we can do is just keep it simple. I mean, there's a template on the CaSTCo website that has just got some columns in with sort of a set of basic questions, but nothing to necessarily go too much overboard about. And then meet often enough, but not too often. I know that sounds crazy, but a monthly seems to be roughly right, because you need to get momentum. You need to build those relationships. You need to build, just be in the same room or on the same Zoom call with each other. And I think it builds momentum. It sort of creates an attitude of, yeah, this is ours, not just it's theirs, it's ours, and we can work on this together. And I think also making sure that the plan is flexible and adaptable and cyclical. It's reviewed. It's an implementation. The plan is something that you implement. You meet to implement it. It's about action. The plan isn't a plan to stick on proverbially on a shelf. It's like, we've got to do something with it. And if it isn't working, we change it. And there are several examples of that happened throughout the project. And I think the other thing is, with it being flexible, is sometimes people just want to crack on. They don't want to do a plan. And when you mention the plan to them, they go, oh, no, we have enough plans. We need to fix things. And that's fine. We need to harness that passion and go, okay, maybe there's a good reason why you need to go and monitor now in that place because you've got a concern about it, or it's the right season to do it, or you've got volunteers champing at the bit and they want to go and do something. you know, I think we need to be adaptable enough to say, yeah, let's crack on, but then let's take that information that is gathered and work out what we do next with it. Because the planning is always about what do we find out, and then what are we going to do next? And we're always moving to, you know, improving the rivers. And I think that sort of enthusiasm and taking action, just, you know, there's nothing like that for keeping people involved, really. So this is a summary of the sort of the benefits of collaborative monitoring planning. It's on the website. I won't go through it all, but there's a couple of those that are really to do with this working with and working for, as Jesse said this morning, working with and for each other. Number one, that, you know, gathering the partners together and just finding out what we all already know and what we can use to move forward. And then that oh, not on there. Not on there. Well, what I want, oh no, yeah. It's not on there, sorry. What I wanted to say was, it's about, yeah, really sorry. It's about taking joint actions and implementing joint actions from the plan. So that if you can see the plan, then somebody can go, actually, we could do that bit, or we could do that bit, we can do the lab, we can do the monitoring there. That's the collaboration. It's not just coming up with a plan together. So thanks. Yeah.
It's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure that's there. I think it's the first and the last one. Yeah, yeah. It's all right. It's there. It's there. You got it. Yeah, yeah. Right. I'd like to invite the panel to the stage. So we have Charlotte Chivers again, research fellow from CCRI, Isabel Durantz, director of Water Research Institute, Cardiff University, Alice Fallon, head of community engagement at Severn Rivers Trust, Rob Idison, farming knowledge exchange officer with Southern Water, and Andy Jeffries, senior advisor of citizen science, the NCEA, Natural England. And we're going to be talking a bit more about collaborative monitoring and co-design. I'm going to invite each of them to introduce themselves and what their role is and what their involvement with CaSTCo has been. So if we start at the far end, shall we, with Rob? Are you happy to go?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Yeah, so my name is Rob Idison. I'm a farming knowledge exchange officer with Southern Water, and I work within the catchment resilience team for Southern Water across the whole of the business's water catchment. And my role in CaSTCo was within the Arran project, the Soil Smart project, and my specific lead in there was the higher tier analysis to look at citizen science approach and then to use academic and lab results to inform the quality of the citizen science approach.
So I'm Isabel Durantz. I'm a professor of integrated water sciences, which doesn't mean much. And I lead an interdisciplinary group institute at Cardiff University that essentially brings different disciplines together to tackle the more challenging water problems. My role in CaSTCo was as part of the Ask demo, and it was it was quite a fantastic opportunity to work with the Ask demo. We initially started in a very small role, which was around systemic stakeholder mapping of the Ask to try and understand who's doing what in the catchment. And we ended up doing something that wasn't at all in the program, which was around trying to see the feasibility of using eDNA tests, citizen science collected eDNA tests.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andy Jeffries. I'm full disclosure, my role doesn't really exclusively involve freshwater or rivers here, but very much citizen science. And in that context, I've worked alongside CaSTCo on various elements because of the fantastic work that's been developed through that. I work for Natural England. I specifically work on the Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment Programme, NCEA, which has been mentioned here. That's a Treasury-funded, DEFRA-led innovation program, which set out to make more strategic our acquisition of data for environmental decision making. It's been around for 5 years now, and as well as technological solutions such as Earth observation, AI, and then strategic sample, professional survey on the ground, and so on, and work to unlock and improve access to existing data and existing data channels. Incredibly, it also involves a section around citizen science, which is great to have that recognized at that kind of level, and gives us a kind of unique, perhaps once in a lifetime opportunity to build or support the infrastructure behind citizen science, and perhaps look at addressing some of the issues that keep coming up and have been today. Our work is sort of centered around a kind of strategic approach, developing frameworks that identify need and link that through to practice, a kind of end-to-end. Why are we doing something? What are we collecting it for? What questions are we trying to answer? Through ultimately to the practice and how you can be involved in that, with a sort of line of sight in both directions through there. And then making accessible the resources to support that, not reinventing wheels, but making use of all the work that's been developed, innovation which has happened in the citizen science field, and then integrating practice to start to answer perhaps new and bigger questions.
Hello everybody, my name's Alice Fallon. I'm the Head of Community Engagement at Severn Rivers Trust, and my role in CaSTCo was managing the team that were delivering the citizen science activities for the River Team catchment demo. And I think really my role was kind of convening the partnership, bringing people together, particularly early on around the collaborative monitoring, and really trying to make sure the voice of the volunteers were represented within that. So we kind of had a few different ways we did that, which can talk about later, but it's been a great project to be part of. It's lovely to celebrate here today.
Hello again, me. So yeah, as I've said, I'm a research fellow at the University of Gloucestershire. I have a background actually in natural science, so I started out as a biologist and shifted into the more of a social sciences for my PhD, which looked at diffuse water pollution from agriculture and the advice and information around that. And since then, in a kind of 5 years since then, I've kind of led a DEFRA test and trial on co-design. So I've kind of become much more engaged in co-design participatory exercises, and increasingly I'm working on EU funded research on all things from pesticides to soil health, but primarily on the kind of social science side of things.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We're going to go to a few questions now. So I've got a few questions I want to ask. But yes, just to remind you that Slido is there, and we'll be going to your questions at the end, towards the end of this session. So what I really want to understand is why collaboration and co-design is so important in achieving improvements in river health, and particularly around the question of monitoring. I don't know, maybe Alice, could you tackle that one first, and then we'll really have to see if anyone wants to add anything.
Thanks, Tess. Yeah, so I think for the River Team catchment, the shared ownership of the collaborative monitoring process was really essential, because it got everybody kind of in the room and engaged with the process, not just the outputs and the outcomes. And I really found that the experience and expertise was distributed, and we're kind of sharing the power, not just between the partners. So the key partners in our steering group were the Environment Agency, Severn Rivers Trust, and our water company, Severn Trent, but also we had a couple of volunteer representatives. It was really important to recognise that we all brought different strengths and kind of expertise and resource to the table, and we could share that, and ended up doing something which ultimately none of us could have done individually on our own. So I think, yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, and it's definitely something that we're kind of taking into the next stage as we grow and develop our citizen science monitoring.
Excellent. Rob, Isabel?
Yes, so I think from a co-design perspective, so the Soil Smart project was working with 5 participant farmers. Those farmers don't change, and we can't project to them what they may or may not want to discover. So when we're co-designing, we're asking, what would you like to learn from this project? Because ultimately, if you have your 5 farmers that aren't engaged with your perspective, if you like, then you're not going to carry that through. So from a co-design, it was increasingly important to understand what was the motivation for those participants, because we can just change the participants because they had such significant impact on the farmed landscape in the specific catchment. So by co-designing, they absolutely felt embedded and responsible from the outset, and it's really useful because that had to be agile, because what might have been a perception that would be interesting to know could soon be discovered to be hard to action, and the results might not deliver. So, for example, we had an extremely dry spring, and identifying some of the citizen science approach was very difficult for it to be informative. Doing an earthworm count, for example, when the earthworms have gone into hibernation and gone really deep into the soil, using a spade doesn't give you the same form of information that it might have done in a nice moist soil, and therefore, so by co-designing, adapting, I felt it was absolutely critical to getting a response from the participants.
Thanks. Yeah, as well.
Yeah, I find all of this is very much seen from an education background. It's very much about knowledge and knowledge sharing. And what I found with CaSTCo is that it was, for us as academics, a fantastic opportunity for learning, for understanding the extent to which citizen scientists could contribute. And that's why we started that, eDNA project, because we were wondering how far we could push citizen scientists in doing what we as paid scientists do on a regular basis, and how far we could push it. And it's an incredible learning, and I think that usually in our field we tend to give knowledge, and in this case it was far more about getting knowledge, and that's the power of that collaboration for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting perspective, isn't it? That, as you say, the sharing of knowledge, both directions. Yeah. Andy, do you have kind of perspective on collaboration from the kind of top end policy?
Well, yes, I mean, I do. Two words came up almost straight away, were motivation and ownership, and not necessarily, they didn't come up in that order, but it doesn't matter where we sit in the food chain here, where we're talking about citizen science, we're talking about volunteers, we're talking about people giving their time to do something. They need that motivation, and I think that ownership is a really important part of it. It's a step more than just getting tea and cake at the end of the day. It's or even seeing the results of the thing. It's the ownership. What then comes of that? What did they feel? What part did they feel in the change of their local environment, and ideally to the national environment?
Thank you. So you've all talked about some quite nice positive things about collaboration and co-design and participation. Sometimes there are risks, and I think, Charlotte, you said, you don't always want to do collaboration. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Just wondered if you had some perspectives on the risks of collaborating sometimes, but also the barriers. What can, it's hard, isn't it? The more you involve people, the harder it can be. So yeah, just quite like to get your perspective on that. Maybe Charlotte, pick up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think a misconception I've heard a lot is that co-design will just add to the burden of time from our perspective. It's another thing we've got to think about. But if it's embedded from the very beginning and we kind of make it part of how we work, then it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge amount of additional work. Because I think a risk is time. I think time from the volunteers and time for us. There's a risk of kind of going around in circles and never making a decision. And I mean, some of my recent work has been around the notion of consensus, and I've seen someone up there has mentioned, kind of power and, who makes those decisions and who gets to make those decisions. And actually a real risk is that the most powerful, loudest voices in the room get to make those decisions. And it's making sure you have a really careful facilitator who's able to draw out all of the voices, because I have seen co-design processes go wrong where they've either been treated as a bit of a tick box or people have retrospectively said they've co-designed and they haven't really. And, you know, and yeah, just I think it's just respecting people's needs, you know, speak to citizens. How much do you want to be involved? Because we had some citizens who said, I've got 40 years experience, I really could have helped here, I could have helped design the project. Whereas we've had others who've said, you know what, I just want to go and look at a river, I'm quite happy to just be led. So I think it's just about being a little bit kind of flexible, even within the co-design. You know, some people might engage a lot with it, others might not. And but I think the more you embed it in your kind of day-to-day as a practice that you do, it doesn't necessarily have to, that barrier of time doesn't necessarily have to be quite as significant as I think people do worry about at the moment.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add any further thoughts?
I'd like to endorse the importance of maintaining momentum with that volunteer coordinator type role, because when you've co-designed a project, we've seen some fantastic momentum after we've done face-to-face events with people in field and started to do it. But that kind of motivation soon declines without that WhatsApp group or that newsletter or something, just to keep that momentum up. And I think it's for us, the co-design is critical because it's our project, the team's project, but the momentum really does fall down to somebody maintaining that momentum. I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah, someone with the energy and the motivation themselves.
The time.
Yeah, and the time. Yeah. Alice, would you want to?
Yeah, just really echo both of those contributions, really. I did actually ask our volunteer reps for their thoughts on this as well, because I thought it'd be nice to kind of canvass them for their opinions. And I think I did write down the quote actually that came back as a concern from volunteers that data collection isn't always followed by visible change, which is a theme that's come up a lot. But yeah, she said if healthier rivers don't result, all else is futile. And I do think that's the reason volunteers are with us, why they're monitoring ultimately, is they want to see something happen. And yeah, there've been various barriers along the way and difficulties, kind of technical issues if you're trialing new methods, and you do need quite a lot of kind of patience and kindness from your volunteers, that you're kind of getting things set up, that, you know, not everything works seamlessly straight away. But we were lucky, we had lots of expertise within our volunteer group, and I think the risk of not collaborating could have been missed opportunities for insight. And also the volunteers were willing to take on jobs like data analysis and things which our internal team didn't always have time or capacity for. So you can risk tokenism, but I think that the value of it is well worth putting effort into. Yeah.
So lots of, do you want to come in there as well? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because for me, the word collaboration is not just the collaboration with the citizen scientists, it's also the collaboration with all individuals, whether they are citizen scientists or not. So, you know, amongst the general public and all the other stakeholders that are not necessarily citizen scientists, there's also a huge amount of collaboration that is required, because all of those who interact with freshwaters within a catchment need to be involved, and we need to bring them in, and we need that collaboration and co-design with them also, because otherwise it's their voice that will prevail, because they've been not invited to the party. You know, it's the famous.
Yeah, so it's the wider engagement as well as the collaboration with the people who are engaged already.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so often I think the volunteers become the ambassadors, so they'll be there regularly monitoring, so they'll talk to swimmers or dog walkers and explain what they're doing, and really, you know, so passionate.
Just starting to talk to yourself.
Yeah. I think that's where at the start of a project, also having, even if it's quite simple, having some kind of stakeholder mapping exercise and a stakeholder engagement plan, you know, so that you are reaching all of the different audiences and stakeholders that might have an interest in the project, whether they're volunteers or, as Isabel says, slightly external.
Cool. Excellent. I can see there are loads of questions coming in, so I will forego my last question and we'll move some of the Slido ones. So I think this is quite an interesting one. How do you balance the freedom of co-design with methodological consistency that's important for data quality? So how do you put a process around it while allowing that kind of freedom? A lot of you have talked about the flexibility and being able to respond in an agile way. How do you balance the two? Charlotte, do you want to?
Sure. So co-design, I think some researchers who are interested in co-design are quite kind of strict about it. They say it really should be co-designed completely and fully and from the very beginning and all the way through. Whereas in the report that we've produced, it sets out a pathway for co-design. So there might be certain aspects of a project where you really can't co-design it that much because you need that quality assurance. But as long as you're transparent and open with the citizens and just say, look, this is just for one decision that we really do need to be a little bit careful on. You know, still capture their views, still see what they think, but I think as long as you're transparent about how decisions are made, it's okay for not everything to be fully co-designed, as long as you're open. Having said that, I think there is a role for negotiation. You know, when we've worked with farmers in particular, farmers are really busy. On previous projects, so not CaSTCo, we had scientists go to a farmer and say, we'd like you to take 100 samples per field. You know, what do you think the farmers said? So, you know, it's like sometimes you need to negotiate and say, well, yes, we might have to give up a slight bit of what we'd like as scientists so that we can get something and get something done. Because I've seen projects actually completely flop and not end up with anything because no farmer says yes. So, you know, it's kind of just negotiating and figuring out, okay, what is good enough for us and also what is attractive to citizens. So, yeah, it's co-designing where it's possible. It's kind of a pragmatic use of it.
Yeah, so not sticking rigidly to a
Yeah,
plan for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, but using it more than is currently being used.
Does anyone else want to add anything more to that?
Just one kind of very small thing. Sometimes the seed of the first approach is the platform that will develop this kind of more method. I can't even say.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So thank you. But my point is, if you don't get the engagement initially, you're never going to get that kind of robust, consistent data. Certainly working with land managers who don't change, actually, you've got to start the journey. And therefore, by encouraging that engagement and then planting that kind of seed that then grows the methodology that you are seeking is actually really useful. But sometimes diving straight in, just reinforcing exactly what Charlotte said. So, yeah, you have to have that flexibility in my view.
Yeah. And so sort of building on that, this other question at the top there is, how do you increase co-design elements when you've already got a citizen science programme in place in a catchment? Do you start from scratch, or how do you build on what you've already got? Don't know. Alice, do you want to tackle that?
I would just really advocate for this new role, which we tried. It was a bit of an experiment for the team, but the role of volunteer representatives, which we created a role profile for. We went out and advertised. We didn't get loads of applications, but it was very specifically a volunteer role to join our steering group. And the ones that we got were, we only thought we'd probably have one, but we had two in the end, really successful appointments to this volunteer role. So that's something that even if you've got an existing programme, you could invite, you know, through a selection process, volunteers to come in and be part of that decision making. Really successful, quite straightforward, and added massive value to our demo and our monitoring.
Excellent. Isabel, do you want to?
Yeah, my question, and it is a question, is it important to have a shared process or a co-design process, or is it important to have a shared vision and a shared goal? And it sounds to me like it's a bit like putting, don't know how you say it in English, the cart before the horse, which is that I think the important thing is that people feel that they have participated to a shared vision and a shared decision, and not everybody needs to participate in making the tool they get there.
Yeah.
And I think having a mainstreaming citizen science which the role of CaSTCo is really about bringing in a common framework and making sure that we get the trust for this data by making it as intelligible by everyone as possible.
Yeah, and that, as you say, that shared vision is crucial, isn't it, as to why we're here, what are we all doing here, kind of. What are we aiming for? We're pretty much out of time, I'm afraid, but I just wanted to give you each 30 seconds to just run through either what would be absolutely key for you in your role to help with collaboration and co-design, or anything that you feel you wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to get out. So if we start at the far end with Rob again, we'll.
Yeah, no, I think it's just that the co-design develops levels of trust and builds relationships. And for me, certainly in the Soil Smart project, those relationships are at the base of getting anything done. So relationships, trust, and respect.
Brilliant. Thank you as well.
No, I just wanted to say that I think CaSTCo has done an absolutely fantastic progress, I think is the right word, in getting people into a collaborative mind. And I just want to say how impressed I am. And yeah.
Thank you.
About it.
Excellent. Yeah, Andy.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to just introduce the idea of collaboration between organisations here. And there's a lot of organisations about. I think CaSTCo has done fantastic work diving deeper into a particular subject area than most people have ever had the opportunity to do. And I think a lot of the learning from that is applicable across a much wider citizen science field and other areas. And I would call for CaSTCo. I mean, we do talk already, but and all organisations to sort of try and bring all this together as a whole and collaborate better over those for all these sort of good practice and others.
Thank you. Yep. Alice.
I think there's probably all been covered in the roadmap really, but it's about sustaining the funding and the vision and the long-term collaboration from people in this room, but from our demo as well, just to keep the momentum going, keep the volunteers engaged and keep growing what we're doing.
Yeah. Thanks. Charlotte.
Yeah, no, just to echo Isabel, you know, CaSTCo's been fantastic. It's been a really exciting programme. So yeah, feel very lucky to have been involved. And yeah, I mean, my hope is that co-design, where it's useful to you all, you know, that you all take it forward and kind of check out a report and see whether any of the principles could be used in either existing or future new projects. You know, and I agree completely around collaboration between organisations. I think in CaSTCo it's really great, but on some of the wider projects I've been involved in, it's just really difficult. So I think the more we can do that, the more we're going to get meaningful action, because I think, you know, the sum of all of our parts is going to be so powerful, you know, and actually we need action on the ground. It's really quite urgent, you know, pollution in this country is dire. So I think the more we can, you know, get citizen science that leads to action, the better. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello, my name's Robert Bradburn, and I'm the Chief Scientist at the Environment Agency. Thank you to the organisers for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to recognise and celebrate the volunteer scientists and communities who are already making such a difference to our understanding of the water environment. I'm lucky to live close to my local river, the River Medway, as it wends its way through parklands and woods, and then on through the centre of town. Thinking about the Medway reminds me that there are so many ways that you can look at a river. I know from my team that in this stretch, the Medway is a highly modified watercourse at moderate ecological potential. I know that the river's path has been hugely modified over time, especially where it flows through the town. I know its flow is highly regulated by our flood barrier upstream and by a range of locks and weirs further downriver. I also know its chemistry and biology is shaped by many factors in the landscape around it. So, I know it isn't a natural river, and it can't be without reversing nearly 1,000 years of local history. But I also know that it remains a very valuable and beautiful river to local people and to the nature it supports. Walking along its banks not far from here, I've caught sight of kingfishers, and I've observed several bat species. Water lilies dot the surface in several places, and barn owls swoop low over the water in the evening. My wife has even spotted an otter just around the corner from here. I didn't see it, and I was very jealous. So when you live near to a river and you spend time with it, you can see and learn so much more about it, and you appreciate it more. That's why, in my opinion, the efforts of citizen scientists around the country can be so valuable when we integrate them into the work of organisations like the Environment Agency. Their local knowledge and appreciation can really complement the science we do to shape and add to the actions around each unique river and place. So what can we do to make sure our science is really complementary? How can we take advantage of the opportunities that come when different organisations pull together towards the same goal? Well, we're not starting from scratch. We have a considerable record in the Environment Agency of supporting citizen science and integrating volunteer data in our decision-making. A good example is precipitation. Here, data from our volunteer observers is combined with Environment Agency gauge data. This is quality controlled by the Met Office, and then it's used across the Environment Agency, in the Met Office itself, and with other stakeholders. The River Chess is also a great example of partnership working and complementary collaborative monitoring. Citizen science monitoring is being directly integrated into our databases and used by the hydrometry team as a source of additional data to give us greater spatial and temporal accuracy. And it's fantastic to have initiatives like CaSTCo acting as powerful bridges, connecting grassroots citizen scientist activity to institutions like the Environment Agency. I know, as an advisory partner of CaSTCo, that my teams have really enjoyed working with you at local and national level to drive what I feel is becoming a real step change in citizen science monitoring. So, where might we be going in future with this sort of collaboration? I think there are 3 areas we can really think about. First, we need to try out new technology to enable citizens to produce better or different data. Hello Lamppost is a great example of innovation. It's allowing us to have virtual conversations with members of the public at 5 different places across the country. These are generating really useful insights and observations on the bathing waters that they are close to throughout the year. And there's a whole raft of new technology coming along that will make getting information on our waters more accessible. So we should think together about how we deploy it. The second thing we should think about is how we make sure we have a good understanding of what groups of citizen scientists are doing around the country and how that can fit together. Through the work of the Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment, we've been working collaboratively across the DEFRA family on the integration of citizen science monitoring with other novel forms of data collection to assess the range and quality of natural capital within different ecosystems. The third thing is that we need to keep working with a wide range of organisations to think how we coordinate all of this better and how we understand each other's strengths and requirements. That's why we continue to play an active role in the UK EOF Citizen Science Working Group and the UK-wide multi-stakeholder participatory monitoring advisory group. Staying joined up with the diverse groups of interested parties is going to be really key as we go forward. And where do we want to get to? Well, strong evidence underpins all aspects of our work in the Environment Agency, and our new strategy places yet more emphasis on this. So maintaining confidence in that evidence is going to be key to making sure that that feeds into effective decisions and really proves the value of any interventions that we make. Now, that doesn't mean that all of this has to be Environment Agency evidence. More and more, we will need to use evidence from a wide variety of different sources. So we will need to be sure of the quality of the data that we're using, wherever it comes from, so that we're able to use it for the wide variety of different purposes we need to put it to. And striving for quality is not about gatekeeping. It's about ensuring that every contribution can stand up to scrutiny and support that good decision-making that we're looking for. It's about everyone being clear about where their input can really help. Now, that's why we published the Technical Advisory Framework last year. I hope you and your groups have found it useful. And I really value your feedback because we're continuing to develop that framework and the tiered approach within it. And in that context, I read your roadmap with interest. I'm looking forward to seeing future versions of it and using the thinking on both sides to take us through to a really positive place working together in future. For my part, in the next couple of years, you'll see my teams publish new guidance on citizen science design and evidence tiers. We will share the research we're doing on new analytical techniques, including eDNA analysis and image processing enabled by artificial intelligence. We're investing in better IT platforms so that new data and digital tools, as they come online, will mean we can analyze things faster, identify new patterns, and share insights more widely. And of course, we will continue to evolve our work with citizen science and citizen scientists across England and the other UK countries. So none of this work can be done without collaboration. Together, we're building something much bigger than one organisation could ever manage alone. So let's keep working together to build evidence and to shape solutions. And let's, as CaSTCo's goal states, keep putting people at the heart of river recovery. Thank you.
It is 10 to 4, and I don't know about you, but my brain is ready for the pub. But yeah, if you just mind getting your seats, I'm going to do a quick 10-minute thing in the spirit of CaSTCo trying new things. I decided to make my slides go automatically. So we're going to see how this goes and see if it's coherent and maybe have a little fun. So it's a little indulgent about, a little bit about water rangers, a little bit about what we've been doing and I've been part of in CaSTCo, and a little bit of let's get excited about the future. Are you ready? All right. Oh, God. Oh. Is it going? Play? Okay. So I'm Kat Kavanagh, Executive Director and founder of Water Rangers. And we started 10 years ago with my dad, collecting water quality at our local lake, filing cabinet full of data, no way to share it with his community. And so Water Rangers started as a data platform as part of a hackathon. And we sort of moved on from there, developing our code for communities, practicing wide-eyed optimism, and being politically neutral. So wide-eyed optimism, we know things are going wrong, but we want to be part of shining a spotlight on what works. And a part of what I think about, and I think a lot of us think about, are those questions people have. And is my lake or river healthy, and how can I help? What can I do to help take care? And Water Rangers has had a lot of success building those tools behind that. Our data platform hosts over 500,000 data points. We support 400 data sets. We've trained 35,000 people, mostly a lot of kids, a lot of adults, and distribute over 7,000. So we're tool builders, starting in Canada, and then coming over here to the UK. being a tool builder means that you try things out and then you see what works for communities. So I'm really interested in how we connect those people and give them the capacity to feel confident in protocols, that they can teach it themselves, that they feel like they can advocate for their local river or lake, they can have those conversations, and that as a community, we can really build that sort of holistic understanding and invite community into those decision-making circles. So in 2021, I moved to the UK, and we started with water quality test kits based on the Canadian ones, and then we adapted them for the UK. And I got together with the Riverway Trust, a completely volunteer-run rivers trust, very small, and a climate action center called Zero Carbon Guildford, who really wanted to do things different. And we ran blitz events, we invited our local councillors, and a very collective effort to try and build some of these tools. We added in Riverfly, and we invited the Duke of Edinburgh kids to be part of our monitoring. So all of that created this sort of network of hyperlocal, volunteer-run hubs where we do it. And that caught the attention of Alex Adam from the Rivers Trust, and he's like, you know, we're doing a lot of these things in CaSTCo. Maybe you should come and see if you can help out. So Water Rangers joined CaSTCo, and it has been so fun to get to work with the people here. Now, one of the questions that emerged as part of that asking questions in the UK, these wild swimmers, is it safe to swim? And these spots didn't have official bathing water status. So as a community, we tried out some new things. We did a fundraiser, worked with University of Surrey, we did a river run, worked with the Climate Action Center, and that's the University of Surrey students. That's Lewis from the Southeast Rivers Trust, he's a microbiologist, helping us develop our methods. So as we were doing all this, we also said, okay, well, we have no money. How do we share our data? And how do we get communities to do it? So the lab was started. We had a master's student recording the sort of artistic journey. And then we started putting out these signs supported by local businesses that sponsors the cost of the testing. So that's then, as we were starting the lab, went up to the Ribble, got to learn from them, brought some stuff back to the lab, then went out with the Severn folks, the EA and all the Severn folks and their Blitz events, and been part of that. And then our volunteers, you know, doing that stuff for that swimming. And that's a UCL student who helped us process some of the samples after one of the Blitz. Now, we also went out with EA to test out some new equipment. And this was us last year trying out Back Too Quick. You can see Michelle's very, very excited. We heard from experts like Kelly, who shared her expertise. And then we all went out together to learn from one another. And I wanted to have a few of these videos here just to highlight that we've been gathering together. Well, with me, I've only been involved in the last sort of year and a half, 2 years. But how we've grown those relationships and how we started to learn from one another's expertise and to develop our own expertise through these networks, through these opportunities to work together. And it's been one of the most fulfilling experiences, personally for me, selfishly for me, but also I think for all of us will recognize that we together have started to build something pretty incredible. And what's been really great for me, I'm working on the impact reporting now. I'm getting to go through all of your quotes and your ideas and try and find ways that we can prototype and build new things like our E. coli monitoring that works in the field. And together we can develop those tools that we trust together and move forward. And then the other thing I wanted to just quickly highlight is our new data platform, which was developed in the last 2 years. And using data principles, this is the Lee, which is part of the, I'm sorry, it's so fast, but I only had 10 minutes, so I had to speed it up. Oh my God, this is really stressful, I'm very sorry. But anyway, the whole idea is it follows the data principles, that's all you need to know, and it tells you what kind of information you have. And then we share it with the Get Data platform and on the CaSTCo website. So we've been working with you guys on these various projects to try and implement some of the things that we've been working on, prototype them together. And if you haven't gone to our website, there is tons of information there that you should go and check out. There is a wealth of information that's there and is not there because we're still developing it. And it just shows how important it is that we need this movement to continue. So, yeah, sorry, it's really fast. Oh my God, so stressful. Last weekend, we did a Blitz event, and this was one of my slides. And I could use this tier, and the volunteers came to me, and they referenced back, or like, oh, we're going to do some of the tier 2, or, you know, I really want to get involved. And that common language that we're developing together through CaSTCo is such an important piece of ways that we can communicate with one another about data quality, about how we want to work together. And I am working on the impact report. Here's a few little snapshots. You guys, is a draft form. I promise all of you, you'll have a chance to review your pages. But some of the quotes there are absolutely incredible, showing the power of what we've been able to do together and using this as a platform to continue. And I had 2 quotes that I wanted to pull out. One from Ellie, just talking about how building monitoring programs through CaSTCo has been amazing. And then from Southeast Water, I had a great one talking about how they can bring that information into their own work to advocate for it. So another, as we're going through the impact reporting, asking people what had the most leverage or influence in affecting change. I don't think anyone here after today's presentations will be surprised. Effective collaboration across organizations, and then the funding capacity to actually do that are the 2 top things. And trust is there too. So, you know, we're all saying the same thing, and the data and the stuff is showing that too. So, as we're sort of moving forward, what now? You know, we've had a lot of, and I run a small nonprofit. Funding's always a worry, right? And how are we going to continue this great work that we started? And by far, continued funding is the thing, and it's so reassuring to hear today that people are working on it, and I know we all are within our own organizations too. So I just want to leave you with a little thought. I guess I was supposed to say more about this, but basically funding. funding. So yeah, pass around the hat. It's hard work, but that relentless optimism we talked about is important. And I want to emphasize that as we're getting better, our standards are going up. So this work is not going to ever get done. Rivers will always need our protection, and we're going to have to continue it. And we owe it to those people on the ground to do our best to go forward and do the work that we need to do to make sure that we make that happen. So thank you.
So I've got the really unenviable task of following Kat there. Thank you very much, Kat. With something which is going to be really dull in comparison, so I apologise. So yeah, I mean, increasingly we're seeing this in conferences. Before I joined consultancy, I was at the Arts University in Plymouth, and this has a really place to my heart in how we communicate science more broadly. I mean, this is just a snapshot of what we've been going through today. You know, big thanks to the guys at the back who've been fastidiously and kind of, beavering away, kind of getting some of these insights into a really accessible kind of illustrated format. So we'll share these with you afterwards, but these give you a little bit of what we've been talking about all throughout the day. I just wanted to give you, I'm not going to try to follow Kat in terms of the kind of amping things up, but just to give you a bit of a playback and just a big caveat, what we did there wasn't a scientific exercise. It's something that we wanted to just kind of get a bit of a temperature check on where things are, where we're at as a collective in terms of who wants to take what forward, maybe where is some heat map, kind of some hot spots, sorry, and then some blind spots potentially, or some gaps. So what we're seeing at the moment is, maybe not surprisingly, lots and lots of interest. The kind of most popular from the recommendations was looking at citizen science accreditation. Some really good coverage and some really good energy and really good ambitions around that. Everyone wants to support, so fantastic. Maybe less so around establishing the funding strategy, which maybe is at odds with what we've just heard there around we need more money. So maybe there are some skills gaps, maybe there are some opportunities for us to kind of plug that with more of that expertise around how we go out and how we secure more of the kind of funding going into the future. So the middle the middle of the pack was the recommendation 2, which is the data system. Two of the top kind of things that were coming out there being around the support for and the kind of involvement in the regional pilots, which is great. We want to see that kind of spread and that national, closing any gaps maybe from a kind of geographic point of view. And then also a big one around kind of supporting data standards development. So fantastic to see those kind of fundamental steps being covered off there. And also for the kind of system develop the architecture and actually kind of what that national catchment data system will look like was well received, and there's lots of interest in taking that forward. So thank you in advance for that. The least popular, if we can call it that, overall was in around governance, which is the kind of recommendation 3, slightly drier subject maybe than going out there and sampling in the river. But it's one that is crucial in terms of kind of making sure that the voices are heard of all of us within this room, and how we genuinely have that kind of participatory democratic view of what governance needs to look like in collaborative catchment monitoring. So one to think about there. Conversely, there were lots of interest in those regional hubs and how we support the pilots and how we interface with CUNLIF and the IWC and what's looking like a regional systems planner role. And also some support there emerging around the NCCC and the blended funding model. So not completely devoid of support for funding, which is great to see, but I think it does look like at the moment we maybe need some more capacity or capability within that space. That said, we are largely probably a citizen science facing kind of group, maybe, and then there are some other gaps that need to be filled. Potentially, if we ran that exercise with others, we might get different results. So, but anyway, just a little playback. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll continue to do some analysis on that, understand a bit more depth, kind of what we're seeing there, and then contacting those people that have said they would like to support us going forward to make sure that we can do that. So that was a really rapid kind of playback. Hopefully that's interesting. We'll share these great images with you as well, so you've got some stuff to muse on and probably put on your socials. And that's it from me. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Ollie.
Are you going first? Or
yeah, I'll go first. So thanks everyone. Oh, it is on, yeah. Thanks everyone for making it this far, both today and in the project. If you were here at the start of CaSTCo and you're still here, hats off to you, because there's a lot who have fallen by the wayside. We must have had hundreds of people working on the project over the last 3.5, 4 years. Paul and I are just going to wrap up the day, really. So yeah, if we can perhaps show, can we go back to the overall more than minutes drawing, because it's it'd be good to just kind of review that one. I think these are fantastic. We've struggled all the way through to explain CaSTCo to people in less than 30 seconds. And hopefully, as we build this movement coming forward, assets like this will really be useful. So thanks very much to Raquel and team back at the back of the room who've been beavering away on these all day. Then just to kind of sum up for me, my sort of observations on the project and today. I think Jesse warned us at the beginning we might get sick of the word collaboration. We've certainly heard it a lot, and it's the first word I've got on my notes here. And again, really hats off to everybody in the project for really embracing that attitude, that collaborative mindset, because not all partners really realized they were signing up to a collaborative project at the beginning, but my goodness, we squeeze a lot of collaboration out of people. And that's gone within the demos, between the different organizations involved, the different sectors. It's been really brilliant to see. To the point in CaSTCo, we started to take it for granted, but it's useful to remember that doesn't happen everywhere by default. It does take time and it does take effort, and it takes that deliberate intention to collaborate at the outset. And my sort of plea to those who are looking at funding these things going forward is try and make sure that we have that time built into those programs that kind of encourage collaboration and make it really happen, because it's so important. We get so much back from it. The other word I've written down here is trust. You know, at the start of the project, it was really clear that citizen science was viewed with a bit of suspicion at best by some people and really not considered trustworthy. I think we've changed that. I think that supertanker is starting to turn around.
We must work with and for the river as well. So we mustn't forget that. And so as we move forward, so let's, in paraphrasing the 16th century guy, if we want to, so let's go to the river if we want to learn about the river, and maybe we'll learn about ourselves too. So thanks very much. Cheers.